Welcome to SEEK Bytes, the podcast by engineers for engineers. Today we're talking about technical product managers with our guests Alex Stewart-James and Leon Belebrov, who work in our platform engineering space here at SEEK. We discuss the differences between technical PMs and their customer-facing counterparts, as well as what are platform products and how we approach building them. All right, so we're here today with Leon Belebrov and Alex Stewart-James. How you going, guys?
Very well, thank you.
I'm around as well, Will.
Excellent.
I'm always here, though.
I didn't get a chance to answer. Everyone jumped in.
That'll happen. Tell us a little bit about your roles at SEEK. What's your role titles and what do you do?
I am a principal product manager looking after our platform product at SEEK. So I've been at SEEK for 5.5 years. I've been in the product space for about almost 14 years and always on the consumer side. So always kind of front-facing products. Over the last 8 months, I've moved into the platform space and looking after teams such as the Core Apps platform team, which basically builds the underlying platform supporting our candidate mobile app, and also the marketplace services team, which builds the business services that power both sides of the marketplace, amongst other products like our internal developer platform and so forth. And my role is really responsible about understanding what the overarching broader business vision is and understanding how can we drive greater efficiency, reliability, stability to our product development to drive greater outcomes for achieving that business vision.
Nice. Now I don't need to go to your LinkedIn profile.
Doesn't have all that in there, but...
No, thanks. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
And what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Alex, a senior technical product manager, part of Leon's team, focused at the moment on our marketplace services and our internal developer platform. So that is the technical services like access to infrastructure, CI/CD pipelines to create deployments, etc., as well as some of the associated services like observability and how we get those into the hands of engineers at SEEK, as well as the business services. So access to core data for SEEK like jobs, applications, candidate profiles, and some of the other services that we would consider core, things like identity as a service, for example, or notifications as a service, so how we communicate with candidates in that case.
Nice. I didn't actually realize that both of you were from my old area of the business. I was in the Apply Services team before I moved over to monetization.
Okay, trader.
And we didn't have product managers actually back then. So that's cool.
The platform product space is very new, as we'll find out. I mean, Alex is a pioneer in the space. I'm joined. Luckily, I've got Alex there to give me the rundown, but it's a relatively new space. And when looking at platform product managers, it's a bit of a unicorn of a product management capability because you've got to have the product skill set, but also have a really good technical understanding of the business. And so being able to communicate to engineers, but also business stakeholders is really critical, which is quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I bet. Can we go over, before I joined SEEK and worked at I never knew what a platform engineer is. What is the platform in our space?
Yeah, certainly. So when we talk about platform or engineering platforms here at SEEK, what we're thinking about is an internal product or a set of products that's focused on enabling our engineers, be that through improved velocity of how they get their experiences out to end customers, and or reducing the technical complexity required to do that. So if you're a product engineer working on something for an end customer, you're probably far more interested in how you can improve that customer experience more than you are how you make sure that your infrastructure, your EC2 instances or otherwise are secure, vulnerability patched, etc., that your Datadog or Splunk setup has all of the metrics you need coming in to give your appropriate service level coverage and visibility. Those sort of things are obviously necessary, but secondary to your primary goal, which is a customer experience. And so by building an internal platform product, we hope to provide those levers for engineers within SEEK to make lives easier and give them more focus on their given product domain.
Maybe if I could ask you, what would be your elevator pitch for the differences between a technical product manager and, I guess, a regular product manager?
At SEEK, we've got a product management capability matrix, which is basically an assessment of what are the key skills, capabilities that a product manager should have at the various levels of seniority. We've recently gone through a process of updating and modifying that to align with a technical product manager and understanding where are the overlaps and where are the differences. What we actually found is that there's a lot of overlap. Both roles think about delivering value to the customer, delivering value to the business, aligning to the business strategy, really understanding customer needs, being able to measure success and effective communication, critical to a product manager and a technical product manager. I think what's unique to a technical product manager, firstly, is around having that technical proficiency and technical mindset. So obviously your users, your customers that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis are engineers. They're the people you're building solutions for, you're building the platform for. So you have to understand what are the key needs they have, what are the key use cases they have. We've recently gone and done a jobs to be done study, which I can touch on a bit after. But really to understand what are the key jobs that a engineer has when working with your platform, and how do we as a platform team solve that as effectively as possible. The other aspect is around focusing on building reusable solutions. So we're all about, instead of building isolated solutions for each specific team as a business, and as all the teams in the business have work on different ambitions, what are the common threads across those? What are the common things that the engineers are working on that we can solve for them so they can go and solve their candidate, their hirer jobs to be done, rather than focusing on those nitty-gritty things that Alex was mentioning before.
So it's a technical product manager because you're working with technical people? Is that kind of...
I think it's more a focus on technical products. So a key differentiator for me in many cases, certainly if I think about what we term as marketplace services or the business services team here at SEEK, is that as an experienced team focused on, say, the candidate side of our business, there's a UI, there's a front end that you can think about to set the scene there and understand what you're going to do or change and how that impacts your end users. Within the sort of technical product management space, we're talking about APIs and API endpoints, not quite as sexy, not always quite as UI based. And so there's that real technical element to what you're thinking about as a product. And I guess what comes with that is being able to understand how your users consume or interact with that, be it dev docs or otherwise.
And so with like a typical product manager, I'm not a product guy, so I might not be saying the right thing, but I would imagine when they go out and figure out what a customer wants, they're looking at how they're using the site, that sort of, where the flow is going, what they're complaining about, stuff like that. How do you guys do that with a tech side? If you, like you said, there's no UI, there's nothing we can see. How are you guys gathering that data on what the engineers need to make their life better?
There's the quantitative side and there's the qualitative side. On the quantitative side, we'll have a look at the metrics of our platform and how it's operating. So what is our productivity like of our engineers? Is there things that we can do in order to drive greater productivity? What's the reliability of our platform? What is the service uptime? How secure is our platform? Do we need to do more work? Do we have any vulnerabilities that we need to centrally fix for the engineers so that they can go off and solve their candidate and hirer jobs to be done? There's also the qualitative side of things, which is, like what I was saying before, the jobs to be done framework that we've recently used to really get understanding what are the key needs, pain points, benefits, challenges that our engineers have. And then what we do is once we've got a consolidated list of these key needs, key jobs, the next step of the process that we're about to go into is doing a quantitative study of these jobs to understand how important is this job for you and how satisfied are you that we're currently meeting that job. And what we get if it's a high importance but a low satisfaction, it means we've got a high opportunity score to try and close that gap for the engineers, as opposed to if we have something that's high importance, so it's really important for you to do, but high satisfaction, it's actually okay, we don't need to focus on it. We're doing a good enough job at it as it is.
Interesting. So you touched on a couple of things then. A question I wanted to ask was what metrics or KPIs do you key performance indicators do you use to track or ensure a product success? And you were touching just then on satisfaction. What other metrics do you measure to know that your technical product is successful?
I think some that certainly jump to mind straight away, far more important than perhaps any other for a platform, is the reliability of that platform. So Leon touched on things like uptime that are really key there. I mean, if our services aren't up and available, it doesn't really matter how you consume them. They're not going to be very useful to you. So that would be, first and foremost. When we think about elements like security, for us, that's obviously ensuring that our platform is as secure as it should be. But it also speaks to this idea of abstracting the need away from some of our product engineers, to solve for some of those security concerns. If you can utilize a deployment pipeline pipeline that creates infrastructure for you that is managed by a platform team, then we can create the sensible defaults from a security perspective that you might need, and you don't have to worry about those anymore. We can manage those for you. So you're getting an efficiency gain there. When we think about what I would call like an experience level concern from a platform perspective, we're really thinking about, to use an example metric a lot of different industry leaders would from a platform product perspective, be things like time to 10th PR. Like how quickly can you get your PR, through our system and into a production or a test environment, to again enable that efficiency gain for you.
Sounds like there's definitely some overlap with product in terms of like similar customer concerns. Like we're always concerned about API uptime and whatnot. I guess just it's kind of like a cousin role in the sense that like on the surface, the description of them sounds like they're fundamentally serving the same role, but every single thing that you do would have this nuance of technical vision through it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think just the other critical point is just your customers are engineers. So you're one step removed from the end consumer because you're actually building it for engineers so that they can go and build better products for your end consumer.
Is part of the role also trying to teach engineers to help think about the product more as well?
There's some engineers that are happy to just give me the task and I'll go off and do it. I actually think product teams work best when engineers have a really good understanding of the business strategy and the business vision and understanding where the customer needs are and everything like that. So I think that having that holistic approach for the engineers is really critical. And I think that's where we as technical product managers can bring that business mindset to engineers, give them an overview of kind of like what is the overarching business strategy that we're trying to achieve. So at SEEK, we have company OKRs we're trying to drive towards. There's our subdomain ambitions, which are like kind of 1 to 3 year ambitions of the teams they're trying to get towards, so that we can actually connect what the engineers are doing to the overarching goal of the business and the outcome they're going to drive with the customers.
And that's a two-way street, right? So I think we have an opportunity to bring our engineers on a journey that's focused on the customer. In our case, it's an internal customer set of other engineers at SEEK, which puts our engineers within a platform team in a really unique position to understand that customer even more deeply than before. We can, for lack of a better term, dog food our own solutions as the customer as well. But we also have the opportunity as technical product managers to learn from engineers around what's developing in the technical space, what sort of technology could be leveraged to provide a better developer experience or more efficiency, for example. So, we have an opportunity to learn from them and I think they from us as well.
Just one thing to add that just came to mind. When I first moved into this platform leadership role, we had a round table with a few people, I think from MYOB and car sales. And it was someone that was quite experienced in the platform space. And they said, you don't know how lucky you are as a product manager to be in this role because one of the key things that a product manager does is you have to be close to the customer. Okay, so you want to try and speak to the customer as much as possible. You're constantly monitoring feedback, but going out and speaking to customers takes time, costs money. We as platform technical product managers, our customers are sitting next to us. And we at any point in time could just turn to them and say, hey, Will, what do you think about so-and-so? And get immediate feedback. And that kind of insight is incredibly, incredibly valuable as a product manager to understand, to ensure that you're building a really customer-centric product for your engineers.
That's definitely one of the things that I remember. I said that same thing countless times to other engineers. Whenever, there's a grad saying like, should I rotate to your team? And they're asking you questions about why they should. Literally sitting next to the people that consume the thing that you build, it's super beneficial to your ability to just rapidly iterate and make change, or even just to see issues before they've been developed. The feedback loop being that small is such a positive, for me, it was such a positive experience on life as an engineer, not being so detached from the customer that we had to make, not guesses, but, data-driven decisions, but we're making inferences from that data, or we're doing very limited interviews with some hirers to get a sense of the landscape. But when you can literally talk to your entire customer base in the same building, in the kitchen, it makes things a lot easier, solving those problems a lot easier because it takes out the guesswork in a lot of times.
Where's the balance of designing a product that, like you said for tagging, for example, you said we put a lot of sensible defaults so they don't have to think about it as much. Where's the balance of like setting those defaults and obfuscating enough, but also teaching an engineer how to then do those things later when they need to? Because I feel like if you obfuscate too much, then when someone needs to change something, they're like, I don't know how to do it. The platform team do this. Just reach out to them. Is there a balance that you need to kind of do there, or is it just hide everything and they'll come to us when they need help?
Yeah, there's a couple of elements to that. The first one is perhaps just providing information around why decisions were made. So for things that, to use the term, are sort of obfuscated away from an engineer, we're not trying to purposefully hide the decisions that were made. And so being able to communicate that, at least why that decision was made, I think is beneficial to help engineers understand. The other part of it, I suppose, is to have that forethought around, like, do we ever want certain engineers within our organization to have to own that decision or that piece of work? Is that the best use of their time? Is that the best way they can bring value? And I think in some cases the answer should be no. We don't expect our engineers or most engineers at SEEK to have to own that problem. We have a platform team dedicated to doing that. There will be some edge cases, of course, where, for example, in a growth and incubation style team, you're probably building things that are really sort of greenfields and brand new, but you're also not building that for a very consistent customer base. You're happy to take some risks there and perhaps lower the experience or the security or whatever it might be to get something out the door fast and just sort of iterate on that over time. So we're not seeking to completely prevent engineers from doing the things that they feel they might need to in order to progress their product as fast as possible, but we are trying to focus on providing what we would term the minimum viable platform. So the most obvious and widespread solutions or capabilities that our engineers can consume to make their lives better or easier or to help them deliver value faster.
Nice.
Cool. Go ahead. Yeah. Close that door.
Yeah, sweet.
Sorry.
All good. Totally forgot about the door.
Oh, you mentioned jobs to be done. You said you'd touch on that. Do you want to touch on that now? What is that?
I'd love to. So the jobs to be done framework it's basically a customer-centric approach to understanding how you want to prioritize the opportunities.
And this is a product
framework.
Yeah,
I guess a product framework. I guess when coming into this role, I'm like, well, we don't. Like, why are we not speaking to our users, to our customers, to our engineers, and understanding what are the key what are the key jobs and needs they have when they're dealing with engineering platform products? And so we decided to run this jobs to be done study. And so we're going and interviewing engineers from across the business because we expect all engineers in all teams across the business to be leveraging the power of our platforms because obviously they drive us greater operational leverage to the organization. And so we've gone out and spoken to about 25, 26 engineers across the business, asking them various questions about productivity, about efficiency, about reliability, about security, about onboarding, all these aspects where platform products should play a positive role or should play a role in that journey. In speaking to them, we've understood what are the key benefits that they get from engineering platform products, what are the key pain points they have. From those, we've been able to synthesize those insights into a list of about 25 different jobs, different needs they have when they're dealing with engineering platform products. This list is great, but it's not prioritized in any way. And what we've done is we've actually themed those insights, those jobs to be done along the engineering development lifecycle. So from information gathering to deployment to experimentation and release to data management and so forth and everything in between. And so we've got different jobs aligning to different parts of that lifecycle. The next step is really to run a study with all engineers across the business and say, okay, these are the key jobs that we've identified that you have when dealing with engineering platform products. Tell us about how important that this job is and how satisfied are you that we're currently meeting this job. If the importance is high but the satisfaction is low, it gives us a high opportunity score, and that's something we should look to prioritize and look to fix. If the importance is high but satisfaction is high, then actually it's important, but we're doing a good job. We don't need to focus on that. And we've uncovered various insights already without them even being prioritized, but key jobs like discoverability of documentation. We've got documentation. We've got good documentation, but that good documentation is everywhere. And so that inability to effectively discover documentation hinders productivity. Or it could be around monitoring system health. We've got great tools to monitor system health, but we don't have that cohesive ability to observe system health across the entire user journey. And so that fragmented approach hinders our ability to react effectively to ensure that the uptime of our user experience is positive. And so that's like some of the key jobs we've done that we've uncovered, and we're really excited to actually run this study to the end, get the opportunity scores, and then have that really prioritized list of customer-centric needs that our engineers have when dealing with platform products. I think what it enables us to do is ensure that we're building products that solve problems for our engineers, as opposed to we just build what we think the engineers need. And I think that's a really fundamental difference.
Is this the first time being as a technical product manager role as well?
This is my second organization in which I've sort of had this role. Certainly seeing a common theme across the organizations I've worked for, and certainly some that I've talked to in terms of how platform engineering and platform product thinking is evolving. I guess across the sort of tech industry more broadly, and it's definitely gaining more and more traction. I think it's a common issue or pain point within many organizations that engineers are expected to own, argue with the full stack, but really like everything, right? So the infrastructure, the security, the observability, the end customer experience, the back end data, and all of the other things that I haven't mentioned. Platform engineering is kind of part of the solution there to letting them focus a little bit less on some of the things that we would call extraneous cognitive load and focus far more on their given domain.
How does that relate to like a DevOps engineer? Is there a correlation there? Is there overlap at all?
It definitely is sort of something that's been developed in line with sort of DevOps practices or thinking. I know that typically the DevOps, very broad strokes is, you build it, you run it. And we would still seek to have engineers think in that respect. But just like, many years ago, you build it, you run it meant you had to rack and stack your own infrastructure. But now you can just deploy that from the cloud. Like what we hope to do is, shift left some more of those concerns like security and observability setup and that kind of stuff, so that you still get that and you're still responsible for, checking your service levels, monitoring your dashboards, taking action if there's an issue. But we just make that easier for you to do. So there's less effort required to get that sort of stuff up and running and keep it maintained.
Questions that I imagine engineers might want to know, like obviously that's the audience we're aiming for. From an engineer's perspective, I guess, what are some like common pitfalls in technical product management and how can they be avoided? So from an engineer's perspective, I think what could engineers be thinking about to help avoid those pitfalls?
The easy answer is the customer. I think in the technical product management space where you're building things for engineers, the assumption is I'm an engineer. I know exactly what my customer needs, so I'll build it and they'll come.
You are not your customer.
That's right. So I think definitely there's an ability to say, look, I have some really good ideas about what I think my customers will need. I mean, I've got that technical know-how. I'm up to date with industry standards and best practice, and I'd love to try some things that are maybe emerging in that space. But I also want to make sure that I'm linking that back to what my customers thinking and feeling about what I've already provided, or perhaps what are pain points for them in their given space. And that links back nicely to the jobs to be done that Leon referred to.
You mentioned earlier a term, and I think I just want to touch on that because I wanted to clarify for people. You said dog fooding, and I think this is a term that a lot of engineers don't hear unless they're in the kind of space that you both work in. Dog fooding, for anyone listening, is the act of consuming your own product after you've built it so that you can actually experience what it's like to integrate from the customer's perspective.
What a mental image.
Yeah, if you're not eating your own dog food, how can you know that your dog is eating well?
Yeah.
Right? So that's the idea behind that. If there's anything else you want to add.
Nothing on the dog fooding part, although I think it's absolutely critical. Like obviously for a TPM, it's a lot harder to dog food their own products because I'm not technically proficient. Like this was one of the biggest challenges for me when I stepped into the role is I don't really have a strong technical background. Luckily, I've got surrounded myself moving into a technical part of the organization. And I remember speaking to James Ross, who's been on this podcast before, and he kind of said, like, we're not getting you, we don't want you in this role for technical proficiency. Like, you're literally moving into a technical part of the organization. You surround yourself with really good people. From a product perspective, as a product manager that was always building products for the consumer side, as you're building something, you're constantly testing that on glass and seeing how it works, what's the user experience and everything like that. And I think engineers need to be able to do that effectively in order to build really products that are going to be leveraged and used by fellow engineers. I think the other pitfalls, I had two other ones that I want to mention as a TPM is without a rigorous prioritization framework, you can get into the pitfall of building the next thing or the thing that the person over there screams the loudest about. And there's a lot of things that we can build, but if you're constantly being pulled in and saying, hey, we want you to build this, or hey, we want you to build that, and you don't have a rigorous process around, how do you prioritize it? Like, how do you measure the value? How do you measure the impact? How do you measure the effort involved in that? How do you measure that it's aligned to company strategy? And putting all those things together to be able to prioritize effectively and then communicate that prioritization framework more broadly so that people understand why you've come to this conclusion can be something that technical product managers can fall into. The other one is around overbuilding, and I think Alex mentioned the concept of a minimal viable platform before. From my understanding, again, as I've mentioned before, I'm not an engineer, but engineers seek perfection and love to go off and build the greatest, the most perfect thing. Sometimes good enough is actually good enough for us to move forward, because that last 10%, that last 20% is just incremental gains, and the incremental gains you'll get from that versus the effort you're going to invest in that doesn't really weigh up. And so really understanding what is the minimal amount that we can build that's going to drive value for your users, for the business, for your product is really, really important to ensure that we're not over-designing, over-building.
I cannot disagree with anything. Those are I hadn't thought about it, but those are definitely the top 3 or 4 things that I would think about coming from an engineer in one of those spaces. Dog fooding, 100%. Test your own products. You might think that you know what other engineers want, but chances are that that's an incorrect assumption.
Have you experienced that? Are you coming from a previous role? Have you experienced building something that the engineers didn't want?
I think not so much that engineers didn't want. I think a trap you fall into with platform engineering, certainly as a technical product manager, is you kind of want to build everything that everyone wants, right? And in some cases, what you end up building is something that one person wants.
Yeah, the vocal minority, right?
Yeah, and so then you're caught kind of managing that forever for a very small set of users where you could have put that time and energy into something that benefited so many more customers or consumers within your organization. And so it's being able to balance, that sort of short-term need with longer-term value creation, and then being honest with your consumers around what makes sense from that, to use the term minimum thinnest viable platform, versus something really sort of very feature or customer specific. And it's totally okay to politely push back on some consumers and request that they own something they might consider more platform oriented, keep that as a sort of back end service within their own team, given that it only really serves them. And part of the reasoning for that is that it hurts as a platform team to support something just for one consumer. But the other one is for the team that really needs that function or feature. If you take that on only for them as a platform team, you instantly become a bit of a throttle point in terms of them, expanding on or doing something different with that capability. If they don't own it themselves, there's kind of no benefit having that one level of delineation there for them.
Make sure to stick around for the next episode where we continue talking about technical product management with Alex and Leon.